Hello everybody! This video is going to be something special. I'm going to be doing the first no-death run of Legends of Kingdom Rush. So the rules are simple. I start from a fresh save file and go through the game from Gerald's escape all the way through Extra Dimensional Menace without letting any of my allied units die. This includes the 4th companion that I can get partway through the adventure. It also includes any of the bonus allies that I can get during specific combat scenarios. This would be the footmen, the young barbarians, and any villagers that can appear in certain red flag scenarios. However, I am not going to be restricting summons to this rule. Summons will time out inevitably, and there are also some very tricky discrepancies, such as the Bombardier's Big Bada Boom ability, which is technically a unit, but its main purpose is to just be killed and explode to deal damage. So I'm going to be allowing myself to get those types of units killed. This also includes things like the Verdant Defender, Olog's Duplicates, Olog's Demon Spawns, or even the Zapper's Tesla Coil that he can summon. Those things I'm going to allow to let die during this, but none of my main companions or the specific allied units that I can save during specific combat scenarios are allowed to die. So those are essentially the rules here, but because it's a fresh save file, that also means that I'm restricting myself a little bit more by not allowing myself to use some of the more advanced abilities that heroes can get later on. So with that out of the way, let's begin. All of this footage is being played at double speed because going through the entire game is just going to take too long, especially doing a challenge where I have to stop and think about my decisions more carefully. It's just going to take way too much time. So all of this is at double speed. Now, Gerald's escape is easy enough that I don't have to think that carefully about maintaining the challenge rules. However, I do get a little bit of difficulty in the fact that I have some bad luck at the beginning, but it doesn't really matter because I have supplies to counteract the low amount of damage that Gerald took. Plus, I have very little risk of actually dying here because all I have to do is blow up all of these enemies. So something fancy that I decided to do was group all the enemies up so that the ranger can come and blow them up with the barrel in one attack. However, this doesn't actually save any time or turns because he used up one turn not attacking at all when he could have just shot one of the archers. And then his second turn where he shot the barrel and blew up 2 archers, he could have just blown up the other one instead. So it didn't really actually save any time, but it didn't really change the amount of turns that he took either. So technically it would be a viable speedrun strategy. And that's kind of what I'm doing to keep myself entertained in these easy levels. I've summoned that Verdant Defender dog there just to keep that archer distracted, but that also means that he backed up a little bit more, so I actually can't even hit him. So now I have to wait a little bit longer for him to get in range, and thankfully he does get in range, so I can just blow him up right away. Yeah, there's not really much difficulty to worry about here. I leveled up Gerald, mainly so that way his basic attack can do more damage. I also go through the effort of buying a tent, just in case I get invigoration for any of my units. That way I can move them a little bit more, and therefore wrap this up more quickly, but it doesn't really matter. So I try to take out an archer right away. My thinking with that is that I'd rather kill all those enemies that are trickier to kill, since past precedents showed me how difficult it was to deal with them. And thankfully, because of Gerald's there, the enemies prioritize attacking him instead of the arcane wizard, so I'm safe to have him there, even though he could potentially die from getting hit by one of those guys. So I managed to get through the first area with no casualties at all, and of course I get blown up with a bunch of achievements since I just beat that stage. That's going to happen for all of the stages that I do. So moving right along to Kremtex Dominion, I have to be careful not to do too many true damage events. So that spider there in the middle means that I'm not going to go that way. I have to go to the top because I don't want to deal with those spiders. They can very easily kill Gerald or any other units that they can get their hands on. Imagine if I got like another melee unit like the Dark Knight who would just die so easily to the true damage that they deal. That wouldn't be good. So my strategy here is just to let these goblin archers get themselves killed, and then to try to burst down these other enemies. I want to take out that guy right away. I also want to take out the other goblin archer right away. So that's my tactic. Luckily, this is enough to finish him off. But if Gerald wasn't strong enough to kill him in one hit, the ranger would have finished him off for sure. So here I decide to go for the gifting of the tent, so that way all of my units can be blessed, because I know that there's a lot of dice roll challenges coming up. So this is one benefit of having the arcane wizard and the ranger together, is that they can both deal 4 damage with some of their attacks, which means I can immediately wipe out some of these more dangerous enemies, like the dogs and such. And I got really lucky there, because the arcane wizard actually managed to deal the maximum possible damage with his magic missiles, so I was able to kill that goblin archer right away. And there we go, I finished off that guy as well. I chose to use the poison arrow instead of the regular arrow, just to guarantee that he would die, even though there was a 2/3 chance. So unfortunately, I lose a little bit of armor for Gerald, which is not good at all, because I definitely want him to do all the tanking, and so 1 less armor means that he's just going to be able to tank less effectively, and he's going to take more HP damage more easily. So, with all of the XP that I built up going through all of those nodes, I decided to go ahead and get a max level ranger right away, rather than anything else. So that was a pretty risky move on my part. Luckily I got the knight as a bonus companion, so I'm actually able to afford leaving Gerald a little bit weakened, so that way he can have someone to cooperate with the tanking for him. And sure enough, I get to take advantage of the ranger's new abilities and newfound high damage by taking out 3 enemies at once. Well, he doesn't take them out, but he does finish off 2 of them and then damage the other one. So I'm free to take out the rest of these guys. Here comes the witch doctor. No, the shaman. I can never get the name right. And sure enough, I can finish him off with magic missiles. But he doesn't get killed by that attack because I deal the minimum damage. So I just use the ranger. And because I've been playing it safe, I managed to get an achievement for taking no damage to my HP 3 turns in a row. Hopefully I can keep that up throughout the entire game. But of course, sometimes things happen. And in fact, sometimes it's a better tactic to sacrifice a little bit of HP in order to wrap things up more quickly. So in this combat scenario, I realize that a goblin is going to get its turn first and get in the way of this orc here. So it's safe to keep the knight where she is, so that way she doesn't take the extra damage from the orc and the goblin at the same time. I also decide to move Gerald up to use Shield of Retribution and tank the attack from that armored orc, so that he takes some armor-piercing damage. And there we go, he took 7 true damage, and now the knight is able to finish off that guy. I get a little bit torn between which enemy I want to kill, but I decide that I want to hit the armored orc first with the arcane wizard, because I can just finish off the little goblin there with the ranger. So now I feel free to level up the arcane wizard, and this ends up being pretty handy because it means that he deals a little bit of extra damage with his arcane missiles, which is handy in a situation like this, since there are so many enemies that you want to just back away from due to how powerful they are. You can see that they're clustered here in the middle, and so it's really dangerous to get up close and try to challenge them like this, but I do know that I'm able to pull it off. All I have to do is play it smart with the distribution of my damage. So I decided to take a gamble here and use Ricochet Shot on the ogre, and it deals just enough damage to leave the goblin archer with 1 HP, but because the ricocheting arrow hits the crate that's right next to the archer, it blows him up and finishes him off. So that's really handy, and I'm able to move the knight up to the ogre to stun him with her shield bash, so that way he loses another turn. He was already rooted the previous turn, so that means that's 2 turns that he doesn't get to do anything. And so I'm safely able to finish off that armored orc with the poison arrow, and I'm safe to finish off the goblin archer with my mage. So I'm able to not take any damage from those enemies that are really dangerous. I decide now to go over and try to burst down this orc here. He takes mostly physical damage, but it doesn't really matter because I'm able to finish off both of these remaining enemies with the high amount of damage from the ranger and the arcane wizard, who lands a blow on that last orc who just took a bunch of damage to his armor. So it was a little bit redundant, but I was just keeping my options open with either of my units because I was still kind of doing a speedrun tactic by just making moves and not really thinking that much about what exactly the repercussions would be, which is kind of the opposite of what you would do in this challenge. But in this case, I do decide to think carefully because I'm facing spiders. So what I decide to do is put the Shield of Retribution on the ranger so that way he can take an attack from this little spider, and I'm going to keep him so that way he gains a bonus 2 damage because the big spider has 8 HP and his poison arrow, since he's max level, deals 6 damage, so the plus 2 means that he's going to be able to finish it off in one hit with that 8 damage. So Gerald is safe to move up here and kill this thing while he uses the poison arrow to kill that spider. And interestingly enough, it's not immune to poison, despite the fact that spiders are all about poison, but not a big deal. In fact, I'm happy with that. So this guy takes a bunch of damage from being stunned and hit by the ranger's arrow, since being stunned counts as being immobilized. And I get 100 HP healed on all of my units because of that healing spring. That's just a way of saying that you get a full heal. So there's a Dark Knight that tries to sneak up on me from behind, so I just try to blast him right away. Now with the ranger, I try to do the same thing, just blast the guy that's closest to me right away, and then keep him there. I actually have no intentions of attacking these Dark Knights up close, because I take true damage whenever I hit them, with a melee attack that is. So I'm safe to attack these guys with just ranged attacks, but I want to keep all of my melee units there instead of attacking, so that way they don't take any damage. So that's how I was able to get out of that encounter without any casualties, so that's an achievement, but also without any damage taken at all, even though I only had half of my units capable of range attacks. So in this combat scenario, I get pretty lucky with the knight and manage to insta-kill that goblin, so I'm safe to move the ranger up, finish off the archer there. Now with Gerald, I really want to tank the bleed effect from this big wolf here, but unfortunately, the goblin archer steals the hit instead, and Gerald is bleeding. And also, unfortunately, he dodges the stun effect that I try to land on him. But it doesn't really matter because I go up here, I finish off this guy, the shaman's not able to attack. Gerald, because I kept him in place, is actually not going to take any damage from the bleed effect because he doesn't move. That's how bleed works. You take 2 damage from moving or performing any action at all, really. So because I don't perform any action at all, he doesn't take any damage. Now I goof off a little bit here by shooting a fireball when I could have just finished that guy off completely with my attack. Something that I could have done though, after having done that, just messing around, was actually to let Gerald land an attack on him, because the epic effect of his basic attack is to heal by 1 HP if he lands an attack on an enemy that's taking damage over time. So this Statue of Eleni here gets Gerald invigorated, which is perfect, because that is how you make the dab actually useful, especially in this boss fight, where you constantly chase around the boss and try to hit him. So with invigoration now, I don't have to worry too much about getting lucky, because instead I just have to get in range, and that's what I'm able to do. So the arcane wizard's not really in a good spot to attack anybody, but I don't want to move him up too close because then he's going to get hit by one of the ranged enemies. So instead, I just chuck the fireball out there so that way I can deal a little bit of burning damage to the enemies, and it at least it wastes the healing ability of that shaman, so that's fine with me. That means he can't move up and deal magic damage to any of my other units. So now I'm going to move the arcane wizard up, and I'm going to freeze this guy because I know that I can finish off the shaman on this turn with the ranger, and since he's free from getting hit by the lightning anyways, I decide to use a full action by summoning the dog. However, summoning the dog was a gamble because there's a chance that he would have left the shaman with 1 HP, but it's fine. Things are going well for me. I got lucky with that. I also got lucky with the goblin archer because for some reason he decided it would be a smart move to move into the fire. So that's what he ends up doing. And I also decide to stun this orc here, just so that he can't do any more damage. And I know that if I distribute my damage the right way, I can finish off all of these enemies. So that's what I do. I move the Arcane Wizard to kill that orc, since he needs to take the most damage. Then I move my other units to get rid of that Goblin Archer and then the Armored Orc. And so I only have this one unit left. Now, because of the positions of all of my units, I want to get them in a better spot to take down the boss. So that's what I do. I start moving all of them, and I start whittling down the HP of this orc, but I don't finish him off just yet. Instead, I move the ranger here, and I keep him so that way the orc can get himself killed by attacking him with the Shield of Retribution. I do move the Verdant Defender up to attack him just to mess around, because I know that he doesn't deal enough damage to kill him anyways. But because I've let this orc die after the boss has already used up his turn, I get this extra turn to move all of my units into position. So my priority is to move them all up to the middle, so that way they can be in a spot to attack him no matter where he spawns. And lucky for me, Gerald is in position to use his dab attack on the boss, which is what I've been wanting ever since the first video that I ever did on Legends of Kingdom Rush. So now that I've been able to set up properly, I can just burst him down with all the damage that I want. I even kept the ranger that turn without attacking, which meant that he gained bonus damage, so I really overkilled Kremtex in this boss fight. Now at the victory screen, I get bombarded with a lot of achievements, and this is all on top of the other achievements that I've earned going through this adventure and playing it so safe. Obviously, you don't want to die anyways, so you want to try to avoid letting your units suffer casualties, but it's interesting to see just how much the game rewards you for playing it that safe. You get so many achievements, and I got a bunch of units unlocked on the way over here. Units that I don't end up using because I have a plan with what I want to do with my main 3. So just looking through the map here, I see what my options are, and I proceed to this ice encounter because I know that I can use the rope here. You always start with the rope every time you begin the Stormcloud's winter adventure, and since that's only there for you to use it up during those dice roll challenges, I might as well just use it, because otherwise it's going to hoard space in my inventory. Now with this combat encounter, I decide to blow up that fire pit so that way this enemy can start burning. I make a bit of a blunder here though, because if I had angled the Arcane Wizard 1 hex down rather than 1 hex up, then I would have been able to completely kill that guy, because he would have moved through the fire and taken 1 damage. And then the next time he moved through the fire, he would have taken another 1 damage, like while trying to pursue Gerald. And so Gerald would have been free to do something else instead of attack him to finish him off. And I also do a little bit of overkill because of the fact that the Ranger has the Keen Eye effect to deal bonus damage, but that enemy would have died if he had just taken 4 damage from his poison arrow anyways. I get a bit unlucky with the magic missiles because not only do they deal the minimum amount of damage possible, but they also don't even spread to the fire pit, which would have been nice because then it would have lit him on fire and then prevented him from regenerating HP. But it doesn't matter because I managed to finish him off and not take any damage at all. I also get lucky enough to have Gerald invigorated, which is always nice to see. I take a bit of a gamble here and assume that the ambush that I'm going to get up to this node is the 4th companion, and sure enough it is. Because otherwise it could have been a dice roll event, and that would have been a potential way of me taking a bunch of damage. And so it would be unwise to level up before testing the waters, because I could use that to heal before going into this combat encounter, which is definitely an easy way to get killed. You see, it's very tempting to use the magic missiles and hope that I hit that TNT barrel, but it's not worth the risk. That's just bait there, because those trolls would be in range to attack the Arcane Wizard, and I don't want that. So I want to move everyone back and prevent them from getting hit. Now I decided to take a gamble here and use the Ranger's basic attack. It deals 3 to 5 damage, and that troll had 5 HP, so it only had a 1/3 chance of actually killing him. But I did get lucky there, so I'm thankful for that. Now with the options that I've got, I decided to just finish off that troll with the Arcane Wizard. And now because this troll is stunned, he's technically immobilized. So I'm guaranteed to be able to kill him with my 3 to 5 damage, because it boosts up to 5 to 7 damage. So, since he had 5 HP yet again, that was enough to kill him. Unfortunately, the Arcane Wizard is out of reach to hit the Troll Chieftain, and so is the Ranger, but at least the Ranger benefits from gaining bonus damage when that happens. But this is actually a bad thing, because I don't want him to completely kill this Troll Chieftain, since I want to be able to poison him. That way Gerald can trigger the epic effect of his basic attack and heal by 1 HP. However, because of the way that the queue is set up, Gerald has his turn before the Ranger does. So, I would have to use the Ranger to poison him, then the Troll Chieftain would get his turn and have an opportunity to attack Gerald, or just otherwise wreak havoc on any of the other units, since he has that Ice Rain ability, and that would have potentially caused even more damage, and maybe even kill any of the other units if he distributed the damage in a certain way. So it just wouldn't be worth the risk of hoping that his AI wouldn't do that. Now, speaking of bad luck, not only did all of my units have to start this match with 1 less HP, and I had to use up my exhaustion potion, but I got the one combat encounter that is the most difficult to complete this challenge with. Since I'm not letting any of my allied units die, I have to make sure that these footmen do not get killed, and they're all in positions that make them prime targets to get completely wiped out by these trolls here. At least one of them ends up getting killed 95% of the time in this Argylham encounter. However, I try to keep them alive here, and so I take a couple of calculated risks, such as attacking that poisoned troll and hoping that he gets finished off by the basic attack, and sure enough he does. I also try to keep as many enemies stunned as possible, since there are so many of them, and they're too close to the footmen for me to be able to, avoid letting them attack the footmen, so I just have to try to kill them all right away. So with the Ranger, I decide to attack that Troll Champion, since I know that I can just finish off this Troll here with the other footman, and that's the one that has full HP, so I'm fine with having him stay up there in danger of all the other enemies. And plus, because I was able to deal a little bit of damage to him, I was able to finish off that Troll Champion. So now, the Troll Breaker is 2 hexes away from the other footman, meaning that he's capable of attacking him, and I don't want him to get hurt. However, I don't want Gerald to get killed either, and he's at risk of being attacked by both the Troll Champion and the Troll Breaker. However, I have a strategy. I put Shield of Retribution on myself, then I freeze this guy so that he can't get his turn, and I use the Ranger to free him from the ice, since he's lost his turn now, and he takes some damage from the Troll Breaker. Now, I decided to keep that footman away because his stun ability is not charged yet, so I don't want to even move him up there and take the risk. So instead, I just try to burst this guy down, and I do deal enough damage to be able to finish him off. As you can see here, the Arcane Wizard deals enough damage to kill him, or to bring him into critical HP, so that way the Ranger can finish him off. And then I skip the turns of all the footmen because they're out of range anyways, and I get to finish off the Argylham encounter with a dab. That's always nice to see. So I was able to keep the rules of the challenge, and I got rewarded with a Sharpening Stone, so that way I can add bonus damage to the Arcane Wizard. And so that's what I decided to do. I do save it up first, just in case I get some other random event that boosts the damage of the Arcane Wizard. As unlikely as that is, it would be nice not to get all the way up to 9 damage, because I could add that damage to another unit instead, which would be preferable. But I do want the 8 damage on the Arcane Wizard, so that way he can one-shot these trolls, because being able to burst down an enemy that has health regeneration is extremely helpful. Now this combat scenario is pretty scary, because of the fact that all these enemies are just grouped up together. I don't want anything to do with them, but I also am not able to retreat Gerald back, because there is one troll that has a turn before the Zapper gets to move. So the Zapper is at risk of being killed by that troll, and therefore I have to protect him, because he could get one-shotted by him. Sure enough though, he's safe, and I get the opportunity to use his full action to stun that Troll Champion, which is really handy. And sure enough now, because I moved Gerald up, I'm able to protect him. Now it's kind of tricky to make the decisions here, but I take a risk and try to finish off that troll with the ranger, and it pays off. And I decided to keep Gerald where he is and use the arcane wizard to freeze all these other enemies. And now, because the enemies really hate your hero, he prioritizes, he being the troll champion, prioritizes attacking Gerald, which means that the arcane wizard is safe, because he could easily get one-shotted. And so now, because I have these enemies in a position where the arcane wizard can just freely freeze them over and over again, I'm in checkmate. Like, doesn't really matter though, because I can stun this guy with the zapper instead, and then I can just use the ranger to poison him, and then I get to finish him off with the dab. Now, if Gerald was missing HP and could have healed from attacking him, then obviously I would have gone for that instead, but that's not what I do. Now, because I have an excess of items, I decide to use up the unidentified potion. It restores the crippling wound on the ranger, but it also deals some damage to his HP. That doesn't matter though. I decide to level up the arcane wizard right away, even though this would have been a chance to heal the ranger. But this actually was for the better, because the ranger and everybody else in the party takes a bunch of damage, so I just use the tent to heal him, and I also have to cure the exhaustion of Gerald. I end up getting another achievement because of all the things that happened. And now, as if all of that bad luck wasn't chaotic enough, I get the fortune of having one of the 2 barbarian encounters as the next one that I have to complete. This means that I have to get through this without letting either of the barbarians die, because those are the rules of the challenge. So, I move Gerald up to protect that one barbarian with the Shield of Retribution, so that way he doesn't get forced into a berserk state, because then he'll just get stunned when I retreat him back. So I'm able to freely move him out of there. And speaking of them getting stuck in a berserk state and then getting stunned, that's what happens to this barbarian. Now, I could have moved him back by 2 spaces, and then Gerald would have been able to tank an attack from the second Winter Wolf and then get freed from the ice. But knowing the enemy AI, they would have just gone for the other barbarian instead and frozen him. And I want to be able to get him out of there because he's surrounded by so many enemies. So I did have to sacrifice that one, taking a little bit of damage. It was for the better, after all, since being next to Gerald means he benefits from the Aura of Soul effect. So he actually takes a little bit less damage from that enemy's attack. I do get lucky with this barbarian and am able to finish off that Winter Wolf, so I don't have to use up another attack on it. Now, this barbarian is getting bombarded with so much damage that he actually ends up dying and ruining my achievement. So, I have to reset the combat encounter and try to do it again. And since I got that achievement for using 10 items during an adventure, I get interrupted by the notification that I unlocked the sorceress. Not like I'm ever going to use her. So, now that I get to start up this new scenario, my first strategy with the new queue that I have and new arrangement of enemies is first to keep the ranger, so that way he can finish off an enemy with his basic attack now that he has keen focus. And once again, I'm going to try to retreat those barbarians back, but this time I'm going to keep this one close to the front. Now, this is just really unfortunate because of how the queue ended up being, but I have confidence in his ability to tank the damage because he's going to get frozen. Then he's going to tank the damage from that regular troll because he's frozen, and he's also protected by Gerald's Aura of Soul. Now, unfortunately for him, he can't move because he's just going to get burned or just be in a worse position. So I decided to keep him where he is. And the Arcane Wizard now is free to one-shot that random troll there. Now, this is very important. You see, this Arcane Wizard is in range of getting attacked by the Troll Champion's ranged attack. But because of the Aura of Soul, he's able to resist 1 damage and not get killed. So that would have also been a way that I lose the challenge. So I decided to take another gamble with the Ranger here, because he might deal 5 damage to this Troll Champion. But I can't keep getting lucky forever. So that enemy lives. It's fine though. Instead, what ends up happening is I move the Arcane Wizard to use Frost Lance on the Winter Wolf and the Troll Chieftain. So that kills the dog, and it prevents the Chieftain from doing anything. And I get to use the Zapper to finish off that troll, so everything works out in the end. In fact, since that troll champion that attacked the arcane wizard has not yet regenerated his ranged attack, he's not able to hit him again. So what I decide to do is move the arcane wizard back, get my revenge on him by blasting him like that. And since this troll chieftain now is frozen, I just keep everybody back so that I can gang up on him. So he's totally surrounded now by all of my units, and I can just bombard him with attack after attack. And sure enough, he goes down. Plus I had more units that could have attacked him. Although the barbarian in the back wouldn't have been able to reach, the other two would have. And in fact, I would have been able to use the Zapper's stun ability to keep him trapped, even if he had, for some hypothetical reason, 50 HP, and it would have taken even more to bring him down. So, moving right along, I'm really close to leveling up to rank 2, so I decide to keep my experience points for that purpose, and I get this obelisk encounter. Now this one has an ambush that happens in the back, so I have to be careful about that. I decide to freeze this troll champion right away. Now, he has no loss of HP because of this, since when his turn comes around, he's going to regenerate the 1 health that he lost. So, all that I've done is effectively keep him out of the combat for a little bit, but it's fine because I'm in a good position to burn all of these enemies and kill them, which is what I want to do. So now I've gotten rid of one of the tentacles, and I've also lit 2 of these enemies on fire, which is perfect because now the sum total of all the damage that I can deal with my units is enough to finish 2 of these guys off. Gerald's attack can kill that guy, and the ranger with his keen eye is able to finish off that other troll. And this one, he takes 5 damage from hitting Gerald with his ranged attack. This troll champion down here gets bursted down by the combination of magic damage of the arcane wizard and the zapper. And now I start moving all of my units up to go and attack this obelisk. However, now I get ambushed by these 3 enemies. So the arcane wizard is not in a good spot to finish off this one of 7 HP, even though he could one-shot it with his basic attack. Getting too close means that he's going to get hit by the other enemies, and that's not a risk worth taking because they still can one-shot him. So I'm going to protect this ranger here and then move him up so that way he can tank an attack from just one of those wizards. So he's just barely out of range for it. So now, between the 2 options that I have, I'm just going to burst down this final one here, and I'm going to start moving the zapper up. I'm going to attack the tentacle, because why not, and then destroy this other one so that I can clear out the middle. And I'm going to summon the Verdant Defender. Now, I get as unlucky as possible, because he deals 2 damage, which means that now I have to worry about killing this abomination. So all I have to do now is just burst him down. The zapper is in a spot where I can keep attacking the obelisk, but instead I'm going to move Gerald over there. Now I can finish off this abomination with the poison arrow, which is fine with me. And so all I've got to do is move the dog up. I was kind of hoping that I would get lucky with the Verdant Defender's dodge chance, or at least not take 3 damage, since that's the maximum possible damage that the tentacle can deal. And so he would counterattack it and destroy it, and then make his way up to the obelisk, but it doesn't matter. So instead of leveling everyone up, instead I just move forward to this camp here. Similar to the Shrine of Alini, it's guaranteed to give you certain effects. So I used the chance to get the maximum possible experience points from that, and now I have 3 guys all at level 3. So the zapper is still at his base level. Doesn't really matter though, because I'm not trying to do anything fancy with him. There is one big downside to not leveling up the zapper though, and it's the fact that his base attack only deals 3 damage. You see, what you want to do at the start of the boss fight every time is kill the 2 cultists that spawn near your units and destroy the 2 crystals that aren't going to hit the boss. And unfortunately for the zapper, he's not able to finish off the cultists, so he's restricted to only being able to attack the crystals. Otherwise the cultist is going to have 1 HP left and then turn into an abomination, which is not desirable. Now here I make a bit of a mistake with the ranger's ricochet arrow. It applies rooted to the main target that it hits, and so that makes it tempting for me to shoot this troll instead. It's mainly because I was hoping that it would ricochet to the troll breaker, and then ricochet to the cultist and finish him off. But unfortunately that's not how things work. But I still go through with the plan that I had anyways, which is to move Gerald up here and tank an attack from the troll breaker, so that way the Troll Breaker kills the regular troll that's been rooted right there, so that way that enemy gets killed right away. But unfortunately, Gerald does not apply that counter damage to the Troll Breaker because the other cultist was able to hit him instead. However, I do get lucky in this instance, since the Verdant Defender deals enough damage to actually finish him off this time, so that's always good. So now, I just move the Zapper down a little bit, so that way he's a little bit safer from the boss that's about to spawn. And now, because of the Troll Breaker only dealing 4 to 6 damage, he's not going to be able to one-shot this mage here, so I have to move the Arcane Wizard over to attack it. Because otherwise, I could have let him do the same thing that I just did with Gerald and the regular troll, which is use his collateral damage to attack him, but that's not how things work out. So I have the perfect opportunity now to just burst down the boss with damage. Now since he does 3 damage, the Zapper can attack either one and make no difference, so that's fine with me. And now I can burst down Olga Kai with actually suboptimal damage from the Arcane Wizard, since he actually only dealt 6 damage due to not being at the edge of his range. So, that's Stormcloud's Winter, a little bit trickier than Kremtex Dominion because of how unlucky I got with the combat encounters there, but I also got kind of unlucky with the dice roll events towards the middle part, or rather the 3/4 part of that adventure. Luckily though, I managed to make it out relatively unscathed. All of my units had pretty high HP most of the time around, which is good, so I was never really at risk of letting anybody die. It was only when the Arcane Wizard got hit by the Troll Champion that things got bad, and also, obviously, when I had to restart one of the combat encounters due to the Barbarian getting killed. So, speaking of getting lucky, I go through this adventure with the hopes that I can make it through all of these dice roll events unscathed. However, I do play it safe by spending supplies instead of taking the risk of a dice roll event. And I decide to level up the Ranger because his poison arrow will deal 5 damage to enemies when he's at level 2. And this means that I can effectively one-shot the skeleton knights, or rather skeleton champions, as long as I use the poison arrow on them. And I have a 2/3 chance of one-shotting the regular skeletons as well with just his regular attack. So that's also useful to have. So I decide to use magic missiles here because I just want to retreat everybody back. The good thing about the enemies having different amounts of movement speed is that they will not get to my units if I retreat them back at the same time. Instead, the skeletons are going to surpass the skeleton champions and the cultists, so I can focus on killing these skeletons before any of the other enemies can group up and overwhelm us. Now, even though I said that I could one-shot the skeleton knight with the poison arrow, I decided to use it up a little bit earlier to destroy one of the skeletons because I knew that that skeleton knight would take enough time to get in range that I could recharge the ability again. So, something that I'm going to do here is keep Gerald in place so that way he can take an attack from the skeleton. That way, he won't get attacked by the cultist because I don't want him to take any HP damage. So now, the Arcane Wizard is in range to attack this guy at maximum power and destroy him. And between my options now, I'm just going to finish this guy off with Gerald's basic attack and then shoot this guy. And somehow I did the maximum possible damage. Since I had leveled the Ranger up to rank 2, I was guaranteed to deal at least 4 damage to that cultist, so he would not have turned into an abomination. So it was a good thing that I leveled him up to rank 2. Now, by some strange coincidence, I actually got the Zapper again in this adventure. Maybe he was curious about the fact that I didn't level him up at all in Stormcloud's Winter, and so he wanted to see if I would do anything better with him this time around. However, I won't. I have no plans with him. I don't need him. Although he does come in handy here. So, right off the bat, I want to get rid of this Acolyte here, and since I have enough range with the Ranger to do a little bit of chip damage to enemies, I decide to poison this abomination. Now, for some reason, when it comes to the Obelisk's turn, it chooses not to heal him, and instead to spawn some tentacles. So, speaking of tentacles, I want to attack this Acolyte here with the Zapper, and turn him into a tentacle. Since the Zapper can only deal 3 damage, that's what he's going to do. It's fine with me. So now I'm going to one-shot this abomination, since he wasn't able to get healed, I'm going to destroy all these tentacles with Gerald's AoE. And now for some reason the obelisk decides to heal the acolyte. But because he gets adjacent to the zapper, he takes 1 damage from his innate effect, and then he gets zapped by another 3 damage from the zapper, so he was actually able to kill that acolyte from full HP this time. Now the strategy that I'm going to use is to bait this abomination into attacking the obelisk by attacking at the dog. And the dog actually dodges the AoE, which is pretty cool. So now I have the power to destroy all these enemies. So I'm just going to finish that obelisk off with the ranger, and then I'm going to continue to attack the abomination with the dog. So because I want him to take even more counterattack damage, I'm going to put the Shield of Retribution on him, and sure enough he takes that damage, and then he gets counterattacked by the dog yet again, and then finally goes down without me having to attack him with any other attacks. Not that that matters too much anyways, since I would have had the opportunity to unleash a bunch more damage on that abomination before he got another turn, but now it's time to focus on these enemies. So, like before, I'm going to focus on bursting down these couple of acolytes while I have the chance, and luckily for me, I was able to finish that one off, although worst case scenario, he would have lived and then turned into a tentacle, since at minimum, I would have dealt 3 damage with the magic missiles, which would have left him with 1 HP. Now, I do make a big mistake here, because I decided to put Shield of Retribution on Gerald instead of on the Zapper, when it would have been much more productive to put it on him to protect him. Now, luckily, he didn't just get killed right away by that magic blast, but still, it was a bit irresponsible of me to not just protect him instead, because it's a lot worse for him to take damage compared to Gerald, since Gerald's got a lot more health to spare. However, all's well. I can unleash a bunch of damage on these abominations and kill them. Now, I don't want to move Gerald any closer to this abomination. Even though I was just saying that he has health to spare, it's still better not to, let him die. So, I definitely want to burst down these enemies before Gerald has to tank anything. So, luckily here I'm able to stun this guy, and then I can put the Shield of Retribution on him, so that way he can tank more damage. Now, it's not like it really matters because all these guys are just bursting him down, but it's nice to have that extra little bit of protection just in case the enemy is able to tank more. So now I'm left with a little bit of a dilemma because I do have the opportunity to level up the Zapper, but I choose not to, and instead I proceed with my units, expecting to get some sort of luck-based combat encounter, but instead, this is what I get. So I decide to use the stun effect on this acolyte because I know that I'm not going to be able to kill him with the Zapper's basic attack, but I do want to be able to prevent him from turning into another abomination, so I might as well stun him so that he can't use that. So I also move Gerald up so that way he can tank another attack from the abomination, and therefore he will be able to deal more true damage to him. So there we go, I triggered the epic effect. Unfortunately, the ranger's big fatness was in the way, and so he wasn't able to allow the arcane wizard to get in close and attack him, and that happened twice, so I had to just use magic missiles. Not that it matters though, because Gerald was able to finish him off, but it's a little bit apparent now that I've been playing for so long that it's starting to take a toll on my mental state, and I'm not making as many good calculated decisions, so the challenge is getting a little bit more difficult due to that, but that's not that big of a deal. So now I have the chance to level up the Zapper, but I choose not to yet again, and to leave him just at 3 damage, and this actually comes in handy. You see, if the Zapper was able to deal 4 damage with his attack, that would leave the demons at 1 HP, and if the demons are at 1 HP, then that means that they will do their kamikaze explosion on me, which would deal a lot more havoc than them just using their regular attacks. So that's not something that I want to do. Now, I did accidentally move the ranger up a little bit too far, since he was able to, since the Flaren was able to attack him, but it's not that big of a deal. So since this demon spawn is stunned, I'm able to move the arcane wizard up and attack that demon dog. So that's what I want to do. And now because Gerald has his shield to protect him, I can move up and let him tank the attack from the Flaren, and now, because he has 3 HP, I can finish him off with the Zapper. So, there was really no big deal about the Zapper only being at level 1, and sure enough, I was able to level up the Ranger because I was boosting him. So unfortunately, Gerald has a Doom die on him, and so I don't want to take any risks with not bribing them, so I just spend the 50 gold to bribe him. And now I swap out the Zapper because of the fact that I have the Barbarian at my disposal, and I took the risk of trying to arm wrestle, but it still didn't pay off, so oh well. Now here, I get an Invigorated Barbarian. That's the best thing that you can get. Invigorated Barbarian is so good, and it's the best thing that I could ask for the upcoming Demon Lord encounter. But first, I get to try out my new powerful toy by fighting all these skeletons. So, the first choice that I have is whether or not I want to move Gerald up, but I decide to keep him there. That's always a good option when you're dealing with all of these skeletons that have differing amounts of movement. And because the Barbarian's invigorated, I get to use his big powerful slam attack on that skeleton. And I earn an achievement randomly because I just happened to kill all the skeletons right away, and none of them could respawn. So there's another achievement that I just got just from playing the game semi-normally, since, in my opinion, it is pretty normal to try to play the game without letting your units die. So that was fortunate for me. Now, thanks to the fact that the Barbarian is invigorated, I'm able to move him all the way up to the demon spawn to kill him right away. And speaking of killing things right away, I do the same thing for the Flare using my Ranger, and for the Demon Hound using my Arcane Wizard. Now, thankfully for me, I can just move up to the other demon and destroy him without using up Gerald's Shield of Retribution by tanking an attack from another enemy. So that's something that I definitely want to do. Now, when it comes to this demon spawn, I made a big mistake here because I was hoping that I would have enough range to attack the Flaren, but that didn't happen. Luckily, though, the Flaren opted to attack Gerald instead, and since the Barbarian's invigorated, I have enough range to move up here and destroy all these enemies, so that's what I end up doing. Now, the Arcane Wizard is just in range to attack this demon dog, so I was able to protect the Ranger from getting attacked, because otherwise that could have been the end of the challenge. So I decided to overkill the Demon Lord since, he's a Demon Lord, and it's fun to punish him for being overpowered by unleashing all of your strong moves on him. So I decided to move up. I use Gerald for my dice roll since he's the one that I want to level up. Therefore, he's the one that can heal in case something goes wrong. And luckily for me, I get invigorated. So I decide that it's fine to level up everybody. And fortunately for me, the only thing that I run into is one more combat scenario that I know that I can deal with efficiently. See, the other thing that could have happened was another dice roll event, which could have gone really badly. For all I know, I could have gotten unlucky at the dice roll event and then gotten my units exhausted, which would have been really bad. But anyways, what I'm doing here is using the Verdant Defender to tank an attack from the Abomination so that way he doesn't attack Gerald. Now, I also use the Ice Lance on this enemy, and that's because I want to move the Barbarian up in front of him so that way when he's free of the ice, I can use the full action attack that the Barbarian has. Since he's not invigorated anymore, I need to be directly in front of him to deal that damage. Now, I get to use the magic missiles on this enemy to break him out of the ice with the first missile, and then deal some damage with him with the remaining 3 missiles. So it's a very effective way to break an enemy out of the ice early, while also still dealing some damage to them, so that way you can deal even more damage to them total in that turn. And sure enough, I was able to finish him off, and even if that wasn't enough damage, the Ranger would have been able to finish him off with another attack. Speaking of which, I used him right away, so that way I could get rid of all those tentacles in the way. Now, with the Barbarian, I'm going to keep him back so that way he doesn't get hit by all of these enemies that are really close. And I'm going to use the Arcane Wizard to freeze this Abomination so that he can't do anything tricky. And now we can see the Obelisk using its healing ability to restore the 1 HP that was lost by the Abomination. I can use the Ranger to take out this one ranged enemy here, And because I'm stunning this enemy using the leap attack of the Barbarian, there's only one enemy that's actually in range to attack him. Now, he would have had no enemies in range to attack him if I just kept him back, but I'm taking a little bit of a gamble here by seeing if he activates Berserker Rage once he's hit. And luckily for me, that's exactly what happened. So, I'm going to move up and use the poison arrow on this abomination, so that way he's in a weakened state. Because he's weakened, the whirlwind attack of the Barbarian will trigger its epic effect and stun him. So for yet another turn, he's out of the picture. Speaking of that, I'm going to be using the Arcane Wizard to freeze these guys, because 2 of them is too many, and so I don't want to deal with trying to survive with Gerald against all that damage. And now I can focus on bursting down this guy with the Barbarian, and because he had somebody to attack, that means that he can stay in his Berserker Rage longer. I'm going to use Magic Missiles to free this enemy from his ice prison, and then finish him off with Gerald's attack. And now, because I have the Barbarian slightly out of range to hit the obelisk with his regular movement, I have to use the leap attack yet again, so that way he can maintain his streak of damage without going into a stunned state. And I decided to use the Arcane Wizard to attack this abomination, and then just use Gerald to protect him from the tentacle that was right next to him. So now I can finish this thing off with the Barbarian, and I can finish this thing off with the Wizard. So that was the end of that combat encounter. I did technically take HP damage because of the Barbarian, but it didn't really matter too much because he healed it all back because of his Berserker Rage, and he was actually dealing even more damage thanks to that effect. So now I have one last ambush, and this is definitely the final conflict that I'm going to have before I make it to the final boss. So I just have to make sure that I get through this unscathed, which I know is what's going to happen because the Barbarian's going to finish off this demon. Then Gerald's going to finish off the skeleton. Then the Ranger is going to finish off the other demon. And finally, this skeleton is going to finish himself off because he did 3 damage to himself and then took burning damage. But the Arcane Wizard also could have finished him off with his attack. So I decided to buy the 2 things that can remove exhaustion, just in case that's what I get from using the tent, because I was hoping that I would get invigoration from using it, but that's not what happened. Luckily though, I didn't get the exhaustion, because if that happened, I would have had to remove it, but it would have removed the invigoration from my units if the ones that had invigoration were the ones that got exhausted. So in hindsight, it was not a good idea to use the tents at all, because half of my units were already invigorated. Now, with this boss fight, the most important thing to be able to do is a high amount of damage in a single attack. Not a single move, like the use of the magic missiles, but literally a single attack, because the boss will teleport after just getting hit by anything once. Now, something really stupid happens here. I try to move 1 hex to the right so that I can attack the enemy on the right side of the screen, but I can't. Every time I select that hex, it selects the boss instead because she's too tall. Now luckily for me, I instead have to attack the one on the left because that's the only one that it can deal the maximum amount of damage to, and that ends up being the correct one. So that did work out in my favor, but it's still dumb that I can't move to the hex because the boss is so tall. Now, here, I decided to take a big risk and let Gerald get lit on fire instead of just attacking the blob that was right next to him, because I wanted the Ranger to benefit from Keen Focus. Now, I could have just attacked the boss with the Arcane Wizard's Ray and dealt 8 damage to it. Meanwhile, the Ranger with Keen Focus only deals 7 to 9 damage, and with just my luck, I get the minimum damage possible. So, that risk was not worth it at all. It would have been much better to just attack the blob and prevent Gerald from getting lit on fire, and then attack the boss with the Arcane Wizard, which would have done more damage. You see, the boss now has only taken that 7 damage, and because of that, it has a remainder of 8 HP left. This is very important, because if the boss was to take 7 damage again, then it's going to stay in this phase. Whereas if it had taken 8 damage, then taking 7 damage again would have been a total of 15, which is just enough to move on to the next phase. However, things don't work out in my favor because of that silly gamble that I made. You see, the Ranger is going to clear out 1 tentacle to allow the Barbarian to get up close to the boss and attack it, and then he's going to deal 7 damage to the boss. which means that the boss has 1 HP left for its phase. So there was only 1 in 3 chance of me landing only 7 damage on the boss, but still, why take that risk when I have a unit that deals 8 damage guaranteed? So now I move up with Gerald in order to use his arc attack. This wipes out the 2 tentacles that spawn next to the boss plus the boss, so that I can move on to the next phase. Now one option that I have here is to use the Barbarian's leap in order to move right next to where the boss is going to spawn. If I had done that, then the Barbarian would have been in melee range to attack the boss, and therefore he would have been able to use his full action ability on the next turn, which would deal the most damage out of all the attacks that I have available to me with this party. But instead, I decided to use the Arcane Wizard to attack the boss and deal 8 damage to it. This is because I actually wanted to gamble with the Barbarian and try to deal even more damage. You see, I'm going to get the chance to use this full action attack on the next turn anyways, but I wanted to take the chance to get Berserker Rage activated so that way I could deal even more damage. It wouldn't have mattered if the Barbarian didn't get Berserker Rage, because I would still deal a high amount of damage to the boss anyways, and on the next turn I would have been able to finish it off. But because I did actually get Berserker Rage, that means that this fight is already practically over. So now I just have to move all of my other units and get the Barbarian ready to deal more damage. So I'm just moving around and destroying these blobs while I have the chance. The Ranger's gonna get lit on fire and take some damage. So my units are getting kind of close to dying because of these gambles that I've taken. However, I deal 14 damage and am able to finish off the boss. And as a result, I've beaten the entirety of Legends of Kingdom Rush from a fresh save file without any casualties, except for summons. So this challenge was not so bad, since all I had to do was play the way that I normally would play anyways, with the exception of the 2 encounters in Stormcloud's Winter, where I would normally treat the extra units that I have there as more expendable. But now, there is definitive proof that it is possible to beat this game without dying. I recommend trying this challenge out for yourself, and even trying to see if a no damage run is possible. Have a good day, everybody.